all-knowing and all-powerful, starting with the elderly wolf uncle. Chapter 31. Chen Tian didn't explain much, just said so briefly. Laura frowned as she listened to the other party's tone of fooling herself as a child, but she didn't get too entangled. Reaching out and taking out the comic of the X-Men in his bag, he opened the page and handed it to Chen Tian, looking at him sincerely. Want to read the story? Chen Tian took the comic and seemed to understand the meaning of the other party a little. Laura nodded her head with a slight smile when she heard this. Then, knock knock. There was another knock on the glass window. Chen Tian heard the prestige. Chen, are you sleeping? Then I saw a timid figure standing outside the window. It's Wanda. At this moment, she has cleaned herself up and refreshed. There is no more sludge covering the face, and the whole porcelain doll-like delicate face wantonly exudes its due beauty. A pair of sapphire-like clear eyes seemed to contain these slight uneasiness and expectations because of the late-night disturbance, and the fair face was also lightly stained with a layer of red. Seeing Chen Tian's gaze projected, the fingers of Wanda's hands behind her are tightly twisted together, revealing her body wrapped in pajamas, which is curvy and thrilling, exuding a sense of maturity that is completely different from her immature face. If the whole person ignores the face, it looks completely like a ripe peach, and you can imagine the picture of juice overflowing with just one bite. With such a figure, coupled with a pure face with a youthful atmosphere, two words suddenly appeared in Chen Tian's mind: pure desire. Of course. Seeing that Wanda also chose to visit from the window at this moment, Chen Tian was more puzzled in his heart. Why don't you like to walk through the door? And what did Wanda come to herself on the big night? Also listening to stories. P.S. The next chapter has been written, but it needs to be revised, and it will be sent out later. I'm really sorry. Chapter 39. Nick Fury's worries. Go take a cold shower and cool off. The night is as thick as ink, and the firmament hangs high without moon or star. The SHIELD 3 curved wing building is still brightly lit. Inside the director's office, these mutants never give people peace of mind. Nick Fury had just finished his call with a congressman, leaning back in his seat and muttering in distress. I thought that the government decreed that the addition of drugs to food to suppress mutant genes, and this race would soon disappear from the world. As a result, I didn't expect that a few remnants of the party would still bring them such a big threat. Meantime, Nick Fury is also thankful that the government made the right decisions. Otherwise, when the mutant grows up in the future, the consequences will definitely be unimaginable. Then, the office door was pushed open. Boss, someone saw Chen Tian and his group's vehicle driving into the center of New York. Coulson walked in and handed over a document with a solemn expression. Before Nick, after Fury asked him to return, he had to put it aside for the time being because the task was too risky. But Coulson is still paying attention to Chen Tian's related matters, and now that he finds their clues and traces, he chooses to report as soon as possible. Nick, when Fury heard this, he sat up straight and took the document with a serious expression, his brows furrowed deeper and deeper. They actually entered the city, aren't they afraid of being discovered? He looked at the record on the document about Chen Tian and his party arriving in the city center, his eyes flickered and flickered, and his heart became heavier. Not only is the downtown of New York City densely crowded, but there are also many important people staying there. If Chen Tian and these mutants are determined to make trouble and do something extreme, I am afraid that it will affect the entire country and even the world pattern. It is not that such things have happened before, and the aftermath took a long time and a heavy price to barely subside. The same thing cannot be allowed to happen again, and these uneasy elements must be dealt with as soon as possible. Nick Fury thought of Chen Tian's exaggerated and terrifying mutant ability, and immediately made a decision. Chen Tian and Charles, and two people with psychic abilities at the same time, have completely become a time bomb with terrifying destructive power in his eyes, which may explode at any time and bring misery to the world. In particular, their location at the moment is still the city center equivalent to the heart of the city, which is not to be underestimated. But to exercise control, it is not so simple. Before determining their motives, if they are rashly organized to arrest them, it will not be counterproductive to anger them. Boss, someone found Jinha's Hell's Kitchen, and the warehouse in the north was washed in blood, and there were many deaths and injuries. At this time, Coulson also knew the seriousness of the matter and continued, according to the situation at the scene, it is very likely that Chen Tian did it. Quote, it's just that we haven't found sufficient evidence yet. Coulson looked solemn, because the cameras in many parts of Hell's Kitchen were in a state of disrepair, and there was no way to get the video footage from the time. After all, gangsters don't leave any handle on themselves. Nick Fury narrowed his eyes when he heard this, and he couldn't figure out what Chen Tian's motives were. Okay, I see. He thought about it carefully, asked Coulson to go down first, and then dialed a phone. Natasha, come see me. Nick Fury said to the other end of the phone in a serious tone. Soon, Black Widow Natasha Romanov, wearing a black tights that outlined his hot figure to the fullest, walked in. Head, ask me to deal with Tony again. What about Stark? She walked with the wind, her burgundy short and medium-length hair swayed with her steps, and her eyes were as bright as amber and her eyes were silky, looking at Nick Fury. This woman's every move exudes a variety of charms all the time, seducing people's hearts. Don't worry about him for now, I'll go back and deal with it later. Nick Fury looked at the other party, his frown did not stretch from beginning to end, took out a piece of information and handed it over. Now I want you to contact this person, he is extremely dangerous. You must be careful. Quote. Black Widow took the information and opened it, looking at Chen Tian's beautiful face in the file, and her sexy red lips outlined a good-looking smile. No problem. Meanwhile, in the hotel near Hell's Kitchen, Chen Tian didn't know what happened on SHIELD, holding a comic book and whispering a bedtime story to the two girls on the bed. Phew. It wasn't long before the two girls, Laura and Wanda, fell asleep and made a slight and even breathing sound. Although they were not together, they had both experienced days of rushing, and they had not slept so peacefully for a long time. Sure enough, they are still little girls, and they will listen to bedtime stories coquettishly. Chen Tian leaned on the bed and looked at the two people sleeping peacefully on the left and right, put down the comic book in his hand and sighed in relief. Then, when the afterlight passed Wanda, he accidentally glimpsed a snow-white color sandwiched between deep ravines. It's really a crime to look at. It's not at all what this young doin should have. What was I thinking? Chen Tian quickly withdrew his gaze when he sighed. After all, the current Wanda is just a 16 or 17-year-old girl. He really can't get his hands off. With his thoughts in the middle of his thoughts, he got up from his bed, straightened his head and walked to the bathroom. He was going to take a cool shower. Chapter 40. Black Widow Natasha. Uncle Wolf's shock. It's early in the morning. The sky has just turned a touch of fish belly, and the cloudless New York City has just experienced the story of a night, and it is about to wake up again before it goes to sleep. In the hotel adjacent to Hell's Kitchen, Chen Tian and his party got up one after another and came to the hall together. Logan. Howlett went to the front desk to check out, put away the fake ID, and a few people walked out the door. Chen, where should we go next? While walking to the door of the hotel, Uncle Wolf turned his head to look at Chen Tian and asked, after all, it was his idea to enter the city. We don't have to think about going to the Canadian border next. I'll have someone pick up Laura's friend. Chen Tian thought for a while, and then slowly spoke, we will stay in New York. Anyway, this city is so big, is there no place for us to stay? Quote, what do you say? Are you really planning to put down roots in New York City? Chapter 1 Previous Chapter 31 100